My next guest says he's Lloyd Russell-Moyle. You remember him, of course, as a former Labour MP. He was ousted from the party, unable to stand at the last election. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Lloyd.
Good morning,
Thank
Julia.
you for joining us. Are you relieved you're not a Labour MP and being forced to go into the voting lobbies with Conservatives otherwise to actually have to vote with Labour, voting to get rid of winter fuel payments for 10 million pensioners, at least 2 million or 3 million or so, desperate need?
Well, I think that it's been slightly overrated. You always in government have difficult decisions that you have to make, and this clearly would have been a very difficult decision. Personally, I think that there are other ways it could have been done. I think that winter fuel allowance should have been made a taxable allowance, so therefore those who are the very wealthiest would have had to pay a bit back more. And I actually think that pensioners who continue to work, so not their pension, but if they continue to work over the state pension aid, should continue to pay national insurance. National insurance isn't just about pension contributions, it's also about social care and healthcare, etc. It goes into the general pot. If you did those two things, you would have raised far more money than doing what they've done now, which actually has cost the government money because a number of £1 billion will be spent on the additional people who are now applying pension credit.
Well, exactly.
It's not just pension credit, of course, it's also the additional benefits that you get.
It opens a door to a whole load of other benefits. I mean, gosh, exactly. Lloyd, I'm unbelievably...
I understand why the government did things. I just would have preferred them to have done it in a slightly different way.
I can't understand why they did it. And I'm absolutely stunned that you and I are in agreement on this. Again, I don't think in the first world country we should have an extra payment for people to pay for their winter fuel. I think it should be part of the pension. In fact, people would argue actually the basic pension simply isn't enough itself. And again, you simply tax the whole thing for anyone on a higher income. They'll end up paying tax on it anyway. So how would you have voted? Given the choice yesterday, we had one Labour MP, John Trickett, who voted against the government, voted with the Conservatives on that motion. We had 52 abstaining. A large number of those would be people basically just not wanting to have it on their record. They voted for it, but haven't frankly got the backbone to say it out loud and take the penalty for that. How would you have voted?
Well, I don't think it's quite fair to say they haven't got the backbone. It's TUC conference. It's TUC conference this week down here, so I probably would have been at TUC conference, busy doing those things, like many MPs would have been. I would have spent.
They should be in Parliament doing their job.
Yes, well, being an MP is multifaceted.
I realise it is, but this is an important vote on something that affects millions of people.
I totally agree with you. I would have spent my time trying to persuade colleagues to have done the right thing. I very rarely rebelled.
And what would the right thing have been?
Despite my rhetoric, I very rarely rebelled under the two previous leaders that I was an MP, because I used my voice internally to have mollified and modified policies. So it would have depended on what promises I had been given. And if I'd been given suitable promises that it would be fixed later down the line, I would have continued to support the government. And if they hadn't have given me those promises, I would have had to have not voted for it.
OK, that's interesting. Now, it's very interesting. We're told by the government, we're told by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, and all their representatives, that government had no choice. They had to do this as £22 billion black hole that they've discovered.
That is right.
Completely out of the... So they had to find the money from somewhere. Again, but you always have a choice in government over where you find the money. And you've just explained other things they could have done that would have actually been better. So they did have a choice. So that's not true. Did they have a choice about freeing 1,700 prisoners yesterday, 40% of the way through their sentence?
Well, that was a programme that was already being started by the previous government, because an absolute failure in us to provide enough prison places. But also, let's be honest, we have got a problem where we are locking up too many people, and we need to, I think, go back to basics in prison, and we need to lock up people who are dangerous and who have an ongoing danger to society, and we need to find other ways that the community really understands when people pay back where they haven't done something that's dangerous to society in terms of violence or an ongoing danger, but they do need to pay back their time.
Hold on a minute. OK, I think we're not locking up enough people. We have a very different view on this. But you're saying unless someone's actually violent, they shouldn't go to prison. So if someone just steals every single day, burgles someone's house, again and again and again, they're 40,000th offence, they still shouldn't go to prison. I mean, I would say those people are a danger to society.
Yes, and if they continue to do so, quite right, you are quite right, they are a danger to society. But hold
on a minute, that's when people do get locked up. So why are you saying we're locking up too many people?
If we compare ourselves to almost all other countries apart from the US,
Yep.
and the US, I don't think that's particularly the model of crime and order that we would like to go down, particularly European countries, they lock up in permanent prison estates less people, but they require more people to do community payback,
Okay.
to do
Lloyd,
community
I'm just going to correct you there.
to do
Okay.
those paybacks.
Other countries other than America, we lock up more people per head of the population than most other comparable Western nations other than America. However, we lock up a lot fewer people per crime committed in most of those other countries as well. We actually don't lock up people very early on when they commit crimes, which is probably why we see so much crime. So the argument, I would say, is that we need to lock up people a bit sooner and a bit longer.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you that we need to intervene quicker, that we need to provide sentences that are short, sharp shocks. We still have some people in indefinite prison sentences that were arrested for kind of stealing a chocolate bar and have not been out years later. There is a problem. I'm not saying that it's a one easy solution. I don't believe that everyone should be let out. But clearly we have a problem that we don't have enough prison places. We don't have suitable prisons that actually are doing any sort of education and rehabilitation. And we are locking up probably the wrong profile of people, maybe too late in some places if your argument's true, and if my argument is in terms of sometimes the people who aren't that it isn't necessarily useful for. And I think a mixture of that review that Labour will have to do will come down the line, and we will need to change the way that we are doing.
But realistically, are Labour going to be able to do this? And there's a lot of talk from Keir Starmer. They need 2 terms in office. I'm doubting right now on present record that they're going to win a second term in office. But is Labour able to do this? Because a lot of the issues they're saying the Tories didn't do this, the Tories didn't do that. But right now they're just embarking on massive austerity, exactly the same as George Osborne and David Cameron did when they got into office in 2010, which the Labour Party castigated them for, saying they shouldn't have done it. And they're now doing exactly the same thing, using exactly the same arguments. There isn't any money to build prisons, they'll say.
Well, let's see. Look, we haven't had a budget yet, and we're not even in the first 6 months of a government. We've got 4 to 5 years. I suspect it'll be 4 years of this government, because I think very few governments go to the last date, do they, unless they're desperate. So we've got 4 years of this government. Keir Starmer and the Labour team have always said it's a 10-year process to turn the country around. If they're only given 1 term, we will only be halfway through some of that progress, and not everything will have been achieved. If it's a 2-term government, then the expectation would be that most of those big things will be achieved. But
good luck with that.
Your listeners know you can't achieve something in 3 months.
No, we certainly not. Can I just ask you, just finally, I've got a bank of TV screens in front of me. You mentioned the TUC Congress, TUC conference is down in Brighton. Currently speaking at that conference is Hussam Zomlot. He's the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, speaking at the TUC. What on earth is the Trades Union Congress representing workers doing, having the Palestinian ambassador speaking at their conference?
I think it's very common for trade unions to have ambassadors from different countries speaking at conferences. I've been there when numerous different ambassadors from different countries have attended TUC conference. So I don't think that seems very unusual.
But I could understand, let's work on trade links with Germany or Japan or something, but the Palestinian ambassador?
Well, I have seen...
What's that got to do with trade unions?
I have been down in Brighton where we've had the South Korean ambassador talking about trade. And
massive trade links, yeah. Do we have trade links with Palestine, largely?
There is an issue about what we want to be trading in Palestine and from the occupied territories, etc. So that seems like a genuine discussion to be had.
Yeah.
Is it the top priority of the TUC? No, I doubt it.
I imagine workers who were worrying about paying their bills.
That should be the priority.
That isn't something this is political posturing.
Well, trade unions should be able to do politics as well. Trade union members pay a separate amount of money into a political fund as opposed to an industrial fund. And the union has 2 jobs. And quite right, their focus should always be on the industrial strategy.
Okay.
But they should also have political views, and they have always invited ambassadors. And picking up one ambassador and saying that that's wrong, I think seems slightly unfair. OK, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one. Lloyd Russell-Moyle, former Labour MP, thank you very much.